What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Mr. Lux, aka the Married Gamer, and I'm back once again with another installment of my Battlefield 4 weapon guide. This is weapon guide 3, and today we're going to dig into the M4. So before we really get into all the stats of this weapon, let's kind of go back and get a little history on the M4. The M4 Carbine is a family of firearms that is derived from the earlier carbine versions of the M16 rifle, which was in turn derived from the original AR-15 rifle that Eugene Stoner designed and Armalite manufactured. The M4 is a shorter and lighter variant of the M16A2 assault rifle. It is a gas-operated, magazine-fed, selective-fire, shoulder-fired weapon with a telescoping stock and a 14.5-inch barrel to ease close-quarters combat. Now, like the rest of the M16 family, it fires the 5.56 NATO round. The M4 Carbine is heavily used by the U.S. military and will eventually replace the M16 rifle for most of the combat units in the United States Army. So that's just kind of a little background on this weapon and its journey so far into real life military. So let's go ahead and jump into the stats of this weapon as it relates to Battlefield 4. Now, right off the bat, we're going to talk about the fire rate. The fire rate is 800 RPM, so 800 rounds per minute, which is also the same when it's in burst fire. Now, if you don't know, this weapon only comes in two fire modes. You have your single shot and you have your burst. So there's no auto fire with this weapon. But even at 800 RPMs, this is still slightly above average in the carbine class, and it's only bested by the ACWR, the MTAR-21, and the SG-553. So even with its, some may think it may be a handicap that it's a burst weapon, but this weapon requires discipline. When you're shooting it burst, you're going to have to make sure that you have a good dead-on aim, and that you're not really running up on people closely. But it can still be effective, but you have to really pick and choose your spots with this particular weapon. So the muzzle velocity comes in at about 580 meters per second, and actually this is second best in the class next to the AK-5C, so I was pretty surprised at that. And when you attach a suppressor, the muzzle velocity drops down to 320 meters per second. Bullet drop, again, with all the carbines, pretty much they're identical when it comes to bullet drop and damage, but the bullet drop is 15 meters per second. Max damage is 25 up to 8 meters, and then it starts to drop off to 15.4 once it reaches about 50 meters. So all of those are pretty much on par with all of the other carbines in the class. Magazine size, again, is pretty much the norm, 31, which is 1 in the chamber and 30 in the clip. As far as the reload goes, the reload with the empty cartridge is 2.4 seconds, and that kind of comes in ranked 3rd in the class. Reload with 1 bullet left in the chamber, it puts it 2nd in its class. So this weapon does have a very quick reload, and you're going to need that, especially when you're having a burst fire weapon or a single fire weapon. A quick reload will help you get back into the action much faster to try to compete with these other automatic fired weapons. With the reload time with a bullet left in the chamber, you're coming in at about 1.85 seconds, as you can see. So now let's move on to the recoil. And with the chart right here, you'll see the spread chart. This chart represents no attachment, so this is the weapon in its rawest form. Your recoil up is about 0.34, recoil left 0.1, and recoil right 0.4. So obviously, by those numbers, and you can see by the chart itself, the accuracy plot chart that I got right here, that this weapon's tendency is going to go up and to the right. And the recoil, surprisingly, it ranks low in class, especially for the up and the left. It comes in at about 7th out of 11 carbines in this game. And as far as the recoil upwards, which is kind of like, I guess, your most important one, and then your recoil right comes in at about 8th. So surprisingly, recoil left at 0.1 is 2nd in class. So it's kind of unique situation for this M4, how it actually ranks in the recoil category. And I'm able to take down enemies with carefully placed shots. So it's not something to really worry about. Just make sure that you have discipline with this weapon. So let's look at the spread. Majority of this is still going to be in the average for the class. Your spread increase, actually this one is the weapon is kind of tied around in 6th place. There are weapons that are similar in this with the same numbers, but it came in about at 6th place at 0.104. The spread decrease is 15. And then, so let's jump right into the aiming down sight. So aiming down sight when you're not moving, 0.3. When you're moving is 0.8. And again, average for the class. And also your hip fire numbers up here are also the average for the class. They pretty much are identical. There are like 3 weapons that have a better hip fire, but pretty much they're all on the same level in terms of being able to connect with bullets to the target. So in summary, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the best person to use a burst fired weapon just because I'm typically not one of those people that has the greatest of aim. So burst fire weapons, like I mentioned before, requires a lot of discipline. It requires really pinpoint accuracy because you only have but so much time to, when you pull the trigger, for all of those bullets to connect. Now the benefit of a burst fire weapon would be that you can kill faster because you're going to put 3 bullets downrange much quicker with the pull of a trigger than automatic fire, but your bullets are going to be controlled. I guess that's the better way to put it. Your bullets will be in more of a controlled space. They're going to hit more on the area where you're aiming, as opposed to auto fire. When you're pulling down the trigger, your first 3 bullets may have a bigger spread pattern than a burst fired weapon with its burst fire capabilities. You just have to be mindful that when you're using the M4 and you have a high powerful scope like I have on here, that you're probably using single fire mode as opposed to burst fire. And then if you want to use burst fire, you can attach the canted iron sights, and that can kind of help you out right there. But as an example right here, you see I'm shooting with a powerful scope with the burst fire on, and my kick is much more exaggerated because of the magnification. So you want to make sure that you're switching to single fire when you're shooting like that, unless you can counterbalance the recoil, as an example of right here in this shot over distance, counterbalancing, and I'm able to take out the enemy. I hope you guys enjoyed my Battlefield 4 Weapon Guide 3 covering the M4, and let me know in the comments any weapons you would like for me to cover. I'm Mr. Lux, the Married Gamer, and I'm out.